Yo, what's going on, everybody? It is your boy Fitzmonk TV here, aka G-Lauren33. I am back here today with another video on the channel for y'all, and this is a bonus segment slash, topic of the Legit Shoot podcast. You guys know I like to do these little bonus segments here and there outside of your normal Raw and SmackDown pay-per-view reviews, right? Because I feel like they deserve the time, and these are usually shorter episodes. I try not to make these super long, but this is an important topic to me personally, because you guys know how big a Sasha Banks fan I am. You guys also know I love Bianca, and it looks like we are heading towards a Sasha versus Bianca Belair match at WrestleMania this year in Tampa. And there's a lot, in my opinion, there's a lot surrounding this match, right? There's a lot at stake, a lot more, than just the SmackDown Women's Championship. And there's many layers to this, and I'm going to try not to make this super long, but it's important to talk about, because I know we're going to be talking about it more and more and more as we slowly build up to WrestleMania in the middle of April, right? So before we get into it, I just want to remind you guys, if you guys are new to the channel, hit the bell right next to my name, Fitzmonk TV, so you guys are notified every time I post a new video. Go check out some of my other content, my other podcasts, right? Raw, SmackDown reviews, right? The Royal Rumble pay-per-view review, which is the most recent pay-per-view podcast that I have when I'm recording this video, because I know a lot of you guys are probably going to be listening to this after, the Royal Rumble, because, we're going to be talking about this topic a lot on the road to WrestleMania. So, Bianca Belair won the Women's Royal Rumble, right? And, the frame it, we know she can pick any women's champion. She could go after Io Shirai in NXT, which we know is not going to happen, right? She could go after the Raw Women's Champion, which is currently Asuka. But let's be honest here, right? Asuka has not looked good in months. She has not looked good since her feud with Sasha Banks last summer. And that's sad. But that's not Asuka's fault. That's the way she's been booked. I mentioned it every single podcast, And, with Asuka going forward, I'm scared that she's most likely going to lose that title to Charlotte on the weeks leading to the WrestleMania. I honestly don't know what you do with the Raw Women's Championship at WrestleMania right now. You could do Charlotte versus Rhea Ripley, right, in a rematch, but it looks like Rhea Ripley might be going over to SmackDown, because Rhea Ripley is now on the main roster, but she didn't debut on Raw, which I expected her to, so she's probably going to be on SmackDown going forward. We'll just have to wait till SmackDown, this weekend to find out, the truth. But, there's options for the Raw Women's Championship, and as good as a match Bianca Belair versus Asuka would be, it's just not the right time for it right now. There's a much bigger match for Bianca if she goes after Sasha Banks and the SmackDown Women's Championship, like we're all expecting her to do, right? And the thing about it is, when you look at Bianca versus Sasha, this is a match that's been teased since before the WWE draft. Right? You remember, before the draft, Bianca was talking about, what if she got drafted to SmackDown and she could go up against Sasha Banks, right? She's been talking about it in every interview, how she wants to, make history with Sasha, with, Black history and all that. And it's a big-time match. It's a dream match for me, right? You guys know some of my Sasha dream matches: Sasha versus Trish, Sasha versus AJ Lee, Sasha versus Rhea Ripley, Sasha versus Bianca, which looks like it's actually going to happen at Mania. And I'm super excited for it, But the thing about it is, if circumstances were different, and I'm mainly talking about the way Sasha's been booked at WrestleMania, I would have no problem with Bianca going over at Mania, right? But the thing about it is, Sasha's going into this without a WrestleMania victory, and they're going to make that part of the story going in. That, no matter what, Bianca is going to mention that at some point, right? And, it sucks, because that should not be the case, especially when you're the best in the world like Sasha. The fact that she's going into this WrestleMania with the possibility of going 0-6, it's sad. And I'm going to bring up something from my friend JDE, right? He is a very big supporter of the podcast. He's actually working on some stuff for the future of the podcast right now. But he made an article, and I'll leave, hopefully I'll leave a link to the article in the description for you guys to check out for yourself. He's a really good writer. I would really, check out his content here. right? But he made an article. This was a follow up to an article he did a couple months ago, right, about Sasha and Bianca. He made an updated version now that Bianca's won the Rumble, right? And I'm gonna quote a little bit of it, right? Because if I was to read the whole thing, we would be here for a while. And if you guys want to check it out, of course, I'll leave the link to the article in the description. But excuse me. And I quote, he says this: "Throughout her career, Sasha has never won a WrestleMania match. If she loses this year, this will make all 6 of her appearances at WrestleMania equivalent to the Buffalo Bills Super Bowl appearances. Yes, I'm talking about her being 0-6. This is bad for someone as good as her. This shouldn't even be a thing to where people could use to build a storyline. The fact that people could even joke about her title defenses alone makes me cringe. I won't hide my bias about that. AEW would not have someone as good as Sasha Banks be winless at their biggest pay-per-view show of the year. Yes, I went there, and I hate using AEW references towards WWE. There are 2 different companies that bring us wrestling entertainment, but that's the truth of it. Would she be putting talent over? Absolutely, but only when it makes a lot more sense for them to be." Then he talks about Bianca. He says, "Bianca also needs a big win. This would be her first ever WrestleMania appearance, especially for the title. And we know WWE needs to make new stars desperately. I'm glad that they had her go over at the Rumble because they've dropped so many times on creating new stars to the point where fans are getting impatient. You don't want to do the same thing with her. Bianca's been on the main roster for over a year, but they barely used her when she was on Monday Night Raw, and we'll never understand why that was the case." Right. And basically I'm gonna read another part of the article on why he believes Sasha should win this match. Right. "Bianca's push should not be rushed. I think her signature win over Sasha is better suited for SummerSlam. Sasha should finish off her reign there and let her reign be complete. A loss at WrestleMania would not hurt Bianca Belair. If anything, this should be a match that goes for a very long time and ends up being so good that we have to see it again. No, Sasha Banks doesn't have to be a heel here. This is probably the biggest myth right now for her. Yes, we all know Sasha is best as a heel, but it doesn't necessarily mean that she has to be. I think that this could be a babyface versus babyface match with a teacher versus student vibe. She would have momentum by SummerSlam to face Sasha again. I understand that people want to see new stars, and Bianca is one of those, but it just doesn't feel justified enough to see Sasha lose the title right now when she clearly has yet to win a single WrestleMania in what is currently her longest title reign. I would still be happy if Bianca won, but I would feel really bad for Sasha. So why not win now? They should have stretched her feud with Bayley to the event. Some people are even trying to compare what her loss would be to Charlotte and Rhea Ripley, when it's nothing like that at all. Charlotte had already won both the Raw and SmackDown Women's titles, plus she had already won at WrestleMania on multiple occasions. She had no reason to go over Rhea at all. Rhea was also part of NXT. Her winning would have made a huge case for the brand and for her to be on the main roster. This is the same case for AJ Styles and Shinsuke Nakamura. AJ Styles had nothing to lose putting Nakamura over after he won the Rumble. He won a WrestleMania a year prior against Shane McMahon, plus nothing came of Nakamura having a world title after that. Furthermore, The Rock won the Rumble back in 2000 to go on and face Mick Foley, Triple H, and The Big Show, where he lost after Vince McMahon turned on him. Then at the end of April, he won the WWE title from Triple H. I've also seen this myth saying WrestleMania record losses don't matter. Yeah, right. Because if that was the case, then the Rock versus Stone Cold trilogy would never meant anything. Or the Undertaker's 21-0 streak wouldn't mean anything, right? The Rock lost to Stone Cold twice at WrestleMania and finally beat him at WrestleMania 19 in his retirement match. They even used the record to build up the storyline. Literally, everyone that faced The Undertaker hyped up his undefeated streak each time he won or built a storyline from it. Yet people now want to say that WrestleMania records don't matter. That sounds ridiculous. And in conclusion, he says, Sasha spent the majority of her career putting people over. This includes all of her WrestleMania appearances. I fail to see why this would be a bad time for her to win this time in a loss that would do more bad than good. If anything, this would be fans getting impatient with the company for their past failures of creating a new star and not wanting to wait. SummerSlam would be the perfect time for Bianca to take the title from Sasha, and Bianca would be a bigger star in the process. So that's where I'm gonna leave it. Right, there is a little bit more here, but I don't, like I said, I don't want to read the whole article, and of course I'm gonna leave it in the description for you guys if you want to check it out. Right, I agree with almost everything JD says here, and I have my own bullet points of things I want to mention because I don't want to ramble too much and get off track. But the first thing I'm going to mention here is Rhea Ripley versus Charlotte, right? At the time, Charlotte was already one of the biggest stars in the company. We all know how big the four horsewomen are, right? Rhea Ripley was an up-and-coming star who was early in her NXT Women's Championship reign. You can make the argument that Rhea Ripley should have held that title throughout all of 2020. All throughout the year, right? And I know when the pandemic hit, everything changed, but there was no reason for Charlotte to win that title. She didn't need it. She was already a star. She had already held both the Raw and SmackDown Women's Championships, a combination of like over 10 times, and she had already had 2 WrestleMania victories before that. Remember, she won at WrestleMania 32, and that's the biggest. When I look at the frame of all the Sasha Banks matches she's lost at WrestleMania, that's the one that pisses me off the most, right? Because Sasha should have won the title at that WrestleMania. The entrance he had with Snoop Dogg, right? The babyface pop she got. Go back and look at Sasha Banks' entrance from that show and how big a pop she got. With Snoop Dogg and everything, she looked like a legit star. That should have been the night that made Sasha the biggest babyface in the entire company, or at least in the women's division. And they didn't. They decided to give that victory to Charlotte. And to this day, I don't understand why. And, it's the same thing for WrestleMania last year. I don't understand why Charlotte won that match. There was no reason for her to do it. She went down to NXT and she didn't elevate anybody. She didn't elevate the show. She didn't elevate the title. She didn't elevate the women's division. It did nothing in NXT's ratings battle with AEW. It did nothing at the end of the day. It hurt Rhea's momentum. And the thing about it is, Rhea struggled the whole rest of the year to regain that momentum. She never regained the NXT Women's title, and she was never able to get back to, the level she was at before. Because Charlotte beating her squashed all of her momentum. And I hate that WWE made that decision. Hate that. If Rhea had won that match, it would have been big for Rhea Ripley, right? It would have made her a big star in her first WrestleMania to beat a legend like Charlotte. It would have elevated the NXT Women's title, and it would have brought more eyes onto the NXT product. Here, it's different. Sasha hasn't had a WrestleMania moment, all right? Let's go through Sasha's WrestleManias real quick. Like I said, WrestleMania 32. That's the one that stings the most. Because we all look back, that was the match of the night. That triple threat that Sasha, Bianca, and Charlotte had. It was easily the match of the night. All right? And, everything they did in that match was absolutely incredible. Sasha should have won. She was the babyface, right? As good as Becky was, Sasha was the most over babyface in that match. She had the reaction. She had the crowd behind her. She even had the Eddie Guerrero gear. Everything was on line for Sasha to get that big moment, the big moment that would make her a star, and they failed. And it pisses me off to that day, right? The next year, they had, I believe it was the Fatal 4-Way, right, at 33 in Orlando. It was Sasha versus Charlotte versus Nia versus Bayley in a Fatal 4-Way for the Raw Women's Championship. Bayley won that match, which, I don't really have a problem with. You could make an argument that at that show, it should have just been Sasha versus Bayley one-on-one. But, I don't really have too much of a problem with Sasha losing that match. All right? That was Bayley's moment, and she deserved it. The next year, WrestleMania 34, I believe they're in New Orleans, right? Sasha and Bayley weren't even on the main card. They were on the pre-show, which is sad and disappointing. You had Alexa Bliss versus Nia Jax on that show. I will never forgive WWE for doing that. Never forgive them for that. You had Sasha and Bayley in their prime on the pre-show, and you had Alexa Bliss and Nia Jax on the main card, which was an awful match, right? But anyway, you had Sasha and Bayley on the pre-show, and the thing is, neither one of them won the Battle Royal. You had Naomi. You know, I don't really care about the what's it called, the Mae Young Battle Royal, whatever they call it. But it was clear that Sasha Bailey should have won that Battle Royal, should have easily, right? But that one's just like whatever, right? The next year, this one pisses me off almost as much as WrestleMania 32. If I was ranking Sasha's biggest WrestleMania losses, I would have WrestleMania 32 as number one, and I would have WrestleMania 35 as number two. That was the one in New York. Remember Sasha left the company for 4 months. She went on hiatus. Right after this, Sasha and Bailey lost the tag team titles to the Iconics. And like I said, I say this all the time, the women's tag team championships have been absolutely awful in all the time since those matches, since Sasha and Bailey dropped them. The only times the tag team titles have felt important were when Sasha and Bailey first won them, and then when Sasha and Bailey, when they were heel with the whole golden role models, when they were elevating everybody during the pandemic, going to NXT, going to SmackDown, going to Raw, defending those titles on all three brands. But, they should have never lost to the Iconics. At that time, I understand you had Ronda, you had Becky Lynch, right? They were the ones that were carrying the company in the Raw Women's division. And, excuse me, I don't remember who was the SmackDown Women's Champion at the time. Oh, yeah, it was Charlotte. It was that bullcrap, right? But, Sasha and Bailey should have held those tag team titles throughout most of the year, if not all of the year. They should have defended those titles on an NXT takeover when we still had fans in the arenas, of course, right? And it pissed me off to this day that they had the Iconics win because they did nothing with the titles. Nothing. I don't even know why they made the change. Sasha and Bailey had only been holding those titles for a little over like 2.5 months at the time. They should have won that match, and they should have went on to go defend those titles throughout the rest of the company, throughout the rest of the year. That pisses me off, especially because it led to Sasha's hiatus for the next 4 months. Even though Sasha came back, even better after that, but still, you guys see my point. And now, last year, WrestleMania 36, too big for one night. The WrestleMania that was supposed to be in Tampa, but ended up in the Performance Center. You had the Fatal 5-Way with Bailey as champion. And I'm not that mad that Bailey won that match, right? Because we all know Bailey and Sasha, they were the MVPs of WWE last year. It's not really, debatable in my opinion. But my thing is, right, at that point last year, Sasha was already owned for at Mania. And if, we were in normal circumstances at Raymond James Stadium, right, they probably would have had Sasha versus Bailey for the title there, But with the Fatal 5-Way, my only thing is, the reason why I would have had Sasha won, because even though they weren't in some kind of glamorous stadium like usual, right, it was still advertised and it was still presented as WrestleMania, So it still goes on in the history books as a Sasha Banks L. And, the thing about it is, what I would have done at the time is, Sasha and Bailey were still heels. For the first part of Bailey's championship reign, I would have had, you had, Sasha as the sidekick with Bailey as the champion. The next phase I would have done is I would have had Sasha as the SmackDown Women's Champion and then Bailey as the sidekick. And then that slowly transitioning into Sasha versus Bailey, into SummerSlam, into the fall, yada, 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 right? But here's the thing now. When you look at the four horsewomen, they all have 2 WrestleMania victories, right? Becky has 2, right? She beat Shayna Baszler at WrestleMania last year, right? And she had her big victory when she beat Ronda and Charlotte in the main event of Mania. Charlotte has 2 victories. Charlotte has when she beat Rhea Ripley last year, and she had the WrestleMania 32 victory over Sasha and Becky. Bailey has 2 victories as well. She has the Fatal 5-Way from Mania last year and the Fatal 4-Way from WrestleMania 33. Sasha has 0. And I believe a lot of us would agree that Sasha is the biggest star of the 4 horsewomen. She's the best of them all, but her resume doesn't always match up, right? Yes, she doesn't have the long title reigns. She doesn't have the WrestleMania victories. She hasn't won a Rumble. She hasn't won a Money in the Bank, And I do think Sasha will eventually cross some of those off. I think Sasha will win a Rumble here in the next couple of years. I do think Sasha will maybe win a Money in the Bank. We'll see. And right now she is in the middle of what's her longest reign with the SmackDown Women's Championship, which she deserves. But she cannot go any further with the WrestleMania losses, right? I know you can't say WrestleMania losses don't matter. You can't say they don't matter when The Undertaker had a streak built off that. The greatest streak in sports entertainment history. 21-0 at Mania. You know how hard it is to win 21 WrestleManias in a row? What? And the whole storyline with Stone Cold and The Rock. Just like JD said in his article. The Rock wanted to face Stone Cold at Mania because he said himself, the one thing that The Rock has not done is whoop that bald-headed candy ass at WrestleMania. And it was eating The Rock alive. The Rock said it. There's never been someone that's beaten Hulk Hogan, beaten Stone Cold Steve Austin, and beaten John Cena at WrestleMania. And that's fact. There's nothing that nobody has ever done that before, and nobody ever will do that because Hogan and Stone Cold are retired, and Cena will be retired here in the next couple years, right? So you can't say, oh yeah, WrestleMania losses don't matter when we've seen some of the biggest storylines and some of the biggest moments in WrestleMania history built upon that. If Sasha had won at WrestleMania 32, I would not be having this conversation. If Sasha had won any WrestleMania, I would not be really having this conversation. But the thing about it is, remember for years, the Big Show was known for never getting the job done at WrestleMania. Triple H, man, he's been in a million WrestleManias, and he's lost about 80% of them. You don't believe me? Go look at the history books. Triple H's losses are crazy at Mania. He lost almost every year for a point in time in the early 2000s. And, that's just the way it is. If Sasha loses at WrestleMania this year, she will be 0-6. One of the biggest stars. We all know Sasha is one of the best of all time, right? But it will always be a stain on her record that she has never won the big one at Mania. Just for the longest time, people would always bring up how Sasha is just never able to defend a singles title. Even though now that doesn't exist anymore, of course, because she's doing great with the SmackDown Women's Championship. But hey, and here's another thing. Sasha's in an early stage of her run. Her early stage of her championship run. She's been champion now for over 100 days, a little over, 3.5 months at this point. And she's doing a great job, right? We don't know who Sasha will face on the road to WrestleMania because remember, we still have the Elimination Chamber. We also still have Fastlane on the docket, right? And the thing is, if it's me, I would have Sasha face Rhea Ripley or Sonya Deville in the next couple pay-per-views. If they don't, and you never know, they might have Sasha defend the title inside of the Elimination Chamber. We don't know. We'll find that out here in the next couple of weeks. But the thing about it is, Sasha's doing a fantastic job. She has not been in a bad match in months. I don't remember the last bad Sasha Banks match. She's, and I know part of that is because Sasha's not just that damn good, but, that she's only wrestling once a week because they're not live touring anymore because of the pandemic. She just goes to the Thunderdome and she gives it her all and then she goes home. She's doing a fantastic job. Elevating Carmella, putting on bangers with Asuka, having intergender matches with Reginald that are decent, right? She's on a roll right now, and you need to continue that going forward. There should be no rush to end Sasha's reign. Bianca is the next big star. We all know that. But there's a bigger story here. There is a bigger story. Patience, right? If Bianca goes in and wins at WrestleMania, right away, right? You're putting all that pressure on her to carry the women's division. You don't have to do that. Bianca is still kind of new on WWE TV. Because remember, right? WWE did a terrible job of introducing Bianca to the main roster. Because when she got caught up after WrestleMania last year, she did nothing. All year, I kept saying, throughout the summer, the smart thing that you should do is build up Bianca, to take the Raw Women's Championship from Shayna Baszler or Asuka. Because I think we all agreed that Shayna Baszler should have took the title from Becky Lynch at Mania and held that title for most of the year. And then Bianca Belair should have been the one built up to take that title from her. But they didn't do that. Bianca was not used on Raw at all. I'm glad that she got drafted to SmackDown and she's been booked much better as of late, right? Her feud with Bayley was, has been really good. She won the Rumble. She had a very good showing at Survivor Series earlier back in November, even though that ending with Lana was ridiculous. But she's been booked really good, you know, since being drafted to SmackDown. And I got to give her credit for that. And, you know, clearly WWE sees her as a big star. But there's no need to rush Bianca here, right? I don't want Bianca to go on a streak where she loses WrestleManias like Sasha. No, nobody wants to see that. Because that should have never happened to Sasha to begin with. That's WWE's fault. That's their fault for being idiotic and not realizing the talent that they have with Sasha. It took a pandemic and Becky and Charlotte, you know, going home, right, for them to realize how big a star Sasha actually is. You know, now you see everything she's doing with The Mandalorian and being a mainstream megastar and all that. We talk about all the time, who are your stars in WWE? Sasha's at the top of the list. She's right there at the top of the list. And she cannot lose at Mania. What you should be doing here is, and I like the way JD said it, student versus teacher. Bianca's the student, Sasha's the teacher. Because you look at this, right? If this match happens at Mania, it's the past and the present with Sasha, right? The past, you know, her and the Four Horsewomen, they kind of started this women's revolution. She's now also the present because remember, Sasha's only 20, she's 28, 29 now, you know? So she's still just at her prime, her wrestling peak right now, right? And you have Bianca, who's the up-and-coming star. We all know Bianca's going to be a big star. We don't have to, you know, play games about this. We all know how big a star Bianca is. But at the end of the day, right, this is Sasha's time right now. Bianca's time will come, but this is Sasha's time, you know? And this kind of goes with the story that they should be doing. You know, Sasha should not be turning heel. Why? She just recently turned babyface over the summer. It was back in September. She's only been a babyface now for 4 months, and she's doing just fine. She's that ultra confident babyface. And yes, it would be easy to turn Sasha heel. That would not be a problem, but you don't need to do that. Sasha's doing just fine as being the top babyface star on SmackDown, and you can do the same thing here with Bianca. What the story should be is Sasha raving up that aggressiveness, right? That's what Sasha's great at doing, right? She should be a more aggressive babyface, trying to teach Bianca, like, hey, I'm the one on top. This is my division. I understand, right? You're the hungry rookie. I was once in your place, but I am, you know, the standard. I'm the blueprint. I'm the boss of this division. And the thing about it is, I don't care how hungry you are. It's not going to be enough for you to come in and take what's mine. That should be the story going in, and you can build it off that, finding, you know, different avenues. But Sasha should just be a more aggressive babyface. Maybe she does some things to Bianca that may look heelish, right? Or maybe make her look like a tweener, but it's more that Sasha trying to teach Bianca, like, this is what you got to do to remain at the top, you know? And that should be the story going to WrestleMania. I also believe that Sasha Bianca should be main eventing night 1 or night 2. They definitely deserve to be in that prime spotlight, the main event 1 of the 2 nights, right? And we still don't know what's going to happen with Edge, right? You know, it's looking like it could be Edge versus Randy Orton. And if that's the case, that clearly that deserves the main event, you know, probably night 2. And if you want to put Sasha Bianca as the main event as night 1 and have if you want to have the WWE Championship precede that, that's the way that I'm fine with that. But Sasha Bianca deserved the main event 1 of the 2 nights of Mania. Because it's a big match. Everyone's going to be watching it, ready for it. And it's going to be classic. Hopefully WWE gives them 20 to 25 minutes. And they should get that, of course, because, right? Remember, WrestleMania is 2 nights this year. It's not 1. So they'll have more time to give them, you know, a banger of a match. So, you know, I hope, right, you guys are understanding where I'm coming from here. Sasha has to win. She has to win. She cannot go down 0-6 at Mania. I remember people were making memes of her being 0-5 last year. And the thing is, Sasha got eliminated by Lacey Evans halfway through the match. She didn't even survive through the end. But people were making memes because at the end of the day, it's still WrestleMania. Here's what you do. You have Sasha, you know, and Bianca have a banger 25-minute match at Mania, right? And, you know, Bianca comes so close to beating Sasha, but yet she just can't get over the hump because Sasha's just that damn good, right? So what you do is, what you do, and the match is, the match is so good, right, that Bianca comes out looking like a bigger star. Because we've seen this many times. Someone has such a great match that even though they lost, they look like a bigger star in the process because they just lost to someone that's better. It's not like this was a loss that, crushed into their career or they lose all their momentum, right? The whole point with Charlotte and Rhea Ripley is Charlotte didn't need to win that match at all. There was no reason for Charlotte to win this match, right? Sasha here, she has to win this match because not only does she view herself as the best in the world, but she also, right, cannot lose another WrestleMania match and go down to be 0-6. So a lot of people would understand why Sasha wins at Mania. Like I said, if Sasha had already had 1 or 2 WrestleMania victories under her belt, we wouldn't have to have this conversation. It would just make the most sense just for Sasha to put Bianca over, right? Because Sasha losing, wouldn't hurt her at the end of the day. It would just add to her legacy, just be another match to add to her already huge resume with like 35-star matches. That's all it would be. But Sasha hasn't won a WrestleMania match. That's why it's so important that she does win. After WrestleMania, right? Also, with Bianca still looking like a star, because we all know, even in defeat, Sasha's going to make Bianca look like a star in the process. So after that, right, you can just build Bianca back up for SummerSlam. You have Sasha continue her strong, dominant title reign. By the time SummerSlam comes along, she would have already been champion for about 10 months, right? So basically a year at that point. And then, Sasha would be ready to drop the title to Bianca. And then you can make, you can do things. There's different avenues that you can discover here, right? Sasha during the spring and summer months leading from WrestleMania to SummerSlam, she could be feuding with Rhea Ripley, right? She could be feuding with Becky Lynch because Becky will probably be on SmackDown around that time. Maybe Ronda Rousey. There's going to be, things to keep Sasha, busy, and will continue to make Sasha have an amazing SmackDown Women's Championship reign. During that time, you build Bianca back up. If you want, maybe you have Bianca win Money in the Bank, right? Maybe you have Bianca win Money in the Bank, and then maybe Sasha doesn't face Bianca one-on-one at SummerSlam. Maybe Sasha faces Becky at SummerSlam. Sasha retains, and then, Bianca cashes in after the match. I would have no problem with that. I feel like that might be even a better option, right? Because maybe you have Bianca turn heel. Because remember, I love Bianca as a babyface, but Bianca is just as good a heel as she is babyface. Just go look at Bianca down in NXT. There's many different avenues that they can go with this, right? And then maybe after that, right, you can have Bianca and Sasha feud, into the fall, right? Go in the Clash of Champions, go have a Hell in a Cell match, since we all know Sasha is the queen of women's Hell in a Cell matches, So maybe that's the direction WWE should go with, Or if you want, you just build Bianca back up and then have Bianca beat Sasha clean one-on-one for the title at SummerSlam. At SummerSlam, it could be Sasha as the face, Bianca could be the heel, or maybe Bianca's the face and Sasha's the face as well. But, I don't think you need to turn Sasha heel for, this match with Bianca. I feel like you just need to have Sasha ramp up her aggressiveness as a babyface, right? And then, it would make sense because the reason why Sasha is going so hard on Bianca is not only because she's the best, but because she knows how big this WrestleMania is to her. It's big for Bianca being Bianca's first WrestleMania and her going after the title, but it's also big for Sasha because Sasha believes she can't lose another WrestleMania. We all know that. So that's why I believe Sasha has to win at WrestleMania. She has to win, right? Plus, one more thing that I'll mention here. Some people have mentioned, potentially Bayley being involved. Me personally, right, before all this happened, I wanted Sasha versus Bayley because Sasha and Bayley deserves to be on the biggest platform possible. We all know that. If it was up to me, I would have extended the Sasha and Bayley storyline, from the breakup that happened in September all the way to WrestleMania, and there's many different ways, they could have done that. I'm not going to discuss that because they chose not to go down that route, and that's not what this video is about. But when you look at everything that Bayley has done, it is fair to mention that Bayley does deserve a big match at Mania. And there is a chance, this is the reason why I'm mentioning this, there is a chance that down down the line, maybe this match gets changed to not just being Sasha versus Bianca, but Sasha versus Bianca versus Bayley in a triple threat. We all know the triple threat would be a banger, right? It's Sasha, Bayley, and Bianca. They have tremendous chemistry with one another. But at the end of the day, I feel like the bigger story here, right? The story that would do that would have the biggest impact, let's just leave it at that, would be Sasha versus Bianca in a one-on-one. But if this somehow transitions into a triple threat, I wouldn't have much of a problem with it. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I wouldn't have too much of a problem, right? Maybe Bayley, maybe Bayley becomes the host of WrestleMania, and maybe that leads to her having some kind of match for legend. Because like I said, Bayley shouldn't be on the pre-show in a battle royal. Bayley deserves to have an actual match at Mania. I don't know what that is, but thing is, with WrestleMania being 2 nights, you can definitely make it work somehow. All right, maybe you have Bayley versus Lita, right? Or Bayley, I don't know. I don't really know, but there's a way. Maybe Bayley versus Beth Phoenix, right? Something like that. But either way, I think we all agree that Bayley deserves a big match. So I wanted to make that small regard because there is a chance, this could just end up being Sasha versus Bianca versus Bayley, right? But we all know the most likely option here is going to be Sasha versus Bianca one-on-one for the SmackDown Women's title. And, if it does end up being that way like it should, it's going to be an absolute banger. And if Bianca wins, it's not that I'm not going to be happy for Bianca at the end of the day. Of course I'm going to be happy for Bianca. I'm a huge Bianca Belair fan, but I'm just as big a Sasha fan. And I know that Sasha cannot lose another WrestleMania match, right? Right? Sasha's only 28, 29, but I feel like Bianca probably has more WrestleManias than Sasha has going forward. This is already going to be Sasha's 6th WrestleMania, and this is Bianca's first. And I'm telling you guys, Sasha cannot lose another one. She cannot lose another one. It's imperative, right? And the thing about it is, if Sasha does beat Bianca, Sasha's going to make Bianca a bigger star, at the end of the day. Plus, there's going to be left for a rematch. People are going to want to see a rematch between Sasha and Bianca if the match is what we expect it to be. So that leads you right to SummerSlam. And like I said, I already brought up different ways they can do it. They can do a Sasha versus Bianca one-on-one. They could have Bianca win the Money in the Bank and cash in on Sasha at SummerSlam, right? Maybe they do something crazy with like a fatal four-way with like, I don't know, Sasha, Rhea, Becky, Bianca, or maybe like Sasha, Becky, Bayley, Rhea. Like there's many different ways they can go with this. But I feel like if they're patient, right, they give Sasha the WrestleMania victory that she deserves. And if they also let Sasha to have the title reign that she deserves, because we know how good Sasha is. And we all know Sasha deserves to have the longest title reign possible, right? When Bianca beats Sasha at SummerSlam, no matter how they do it, it's gonna feel just as special, if not more special, as if they had Bianca win the title at Mania. It's gonna feel like a huge moment, right? Like when Daniel Bryan beat John Cena at SummerSlam 2013. That's what this is gonna feel like at the end of the day. So I feel like if WWE is patient here and they have Sasha get the WrestleMania victory she deserves, right? And it's going to be brought up in the storyline. I know it. No matter if it's Bianca Belair or Corey Graves or Bayley or Michael Cole, they're going to bring up that Sasha's never won a WrestleMania match. The same way they kept mentioning, right, how Alexa Bliss and Bayley both mentioned how Sasha could never defend a singles title. It's going to be brought up. This is the way WWE is. And Sasha doesn't deserve that. We all know Sasha's too good to have that stupid curse of her never being able to win a WrestleMania match, right? And the thing about it is, Bianca will. So basically, to wrap this all up and put a nice little bow on it, Bianca will be the one to take the title from Sasha Banks. She will be the one to beat Sasha for the SmackDown Women's title eventually. Right? I feel like saving that moment for SummerSlam and giving Sasha the moment she's been deserving of for 6 years now at WrestleMania this year in Tampa, right, will be a bigger moment and will be a bigger feud and will be something that we all remember as one of the best things in WWE in 2021. Right? So let me know in the comment section down below what you guys thought, right? Let me know what you guys thought of, this podcast. I know I went a little bit long, but but Yeah, but let me know what you guys thought of the podcast. Like I said, I know I rambled on a little bit, but I felt it was important, for us to talk about, why it's so important that Sasha beats Bianca at WrestleMania if they go down the route like we're all expecting, right? And let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. I'll be looking at them. I'll be replying to them as always, right? Leave a like if you guys enjoyed the video. Subscribe if you guys are new to the channel by hitting the bell next to my name, Fitzmonk TV, so you guys are notified every time I post a new video. Thank you guys for everything. Stay safe and help y'all. Peace.